Hello everyone, today I want to talk about gender roles and Christianity. And if you are new here to my YouTube channel, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe and go ahead and like this video and leave me a comment. I always like reading your comments. Oftentimes I learn a lot from your comments, things for me to consider to continue to learn and explore more on the topic, and I'm sure that other people benefit as well from hearing your thoughts. Always, though, keep it respectful, please. So let's get started on today's video. Today I want to share about a Twitter post that I shared a few days ago, and it had to do with my personal opinion on how helpful it has been for me as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, to separate gender from what I do here in the home. I have a lot of pushback from complementarians, which I'm okay receiving as long as my view is respected as well, and no one expects me to just take on their view just because they are convinced that their view is most supported by scripture. But I don't mind hearing pushback. I wrote, sometimes when we attach a gender role to a simple home or family task, it turns something completely normal, necessary, and important into something it doesn't have to be. I've found happiness in my marriage working with a team mentality versus roles designated by gender. I want to start talking about what motivated this tweet, my thoughts on a little more in depth on what I was talking about. And then I want to talk about the comments that I received and the problems that I find with those. And possibly I want to share also another example of another Twitter exchange and how I feel like that's related. Having to do with, as Christians, how we have conversations about things we disagree with. So first, I want to talk about what I was doing when I decided to share this Twitter post. I was washing dishes. As I was washing dishes, I thought to myself, what's my motivation for doing this household task? Is my reason for doing this because I am a woman? Am I doing this because I'm a woman? And in this house, because of my gender, it's my role as a woman to wash the dishes. When I was younger, I might have felt that way, especially because my culture grew up, I was born into a Mexican family, and when you are in an environment of, I would call them Hispanics, and not just Mexicans, but other Spanish-speaking cultures, you grow up hearing commentary, worldviews, having to do with your gender and the expectations that society places on you because of your gender. So I've always wondered about this. As a young girl, I was conflicted. I felt I would really enjoy being a mother and doing things around the house. But I would also enjoy pursuing higher education and being a career woman. And I thought at my young age, I thought I had to choose between those two things. When I was doing this task, I thought, I'm washing these dishes not because it comes with the gender, but because I am a part of this team, which is my family. My kids are in this team, my husband is in this team, and I am in this team. And this house, our life, is a team effort. And if one of the team players is doing something for the team, like my husband was working at the time, then my part, my contribution in that moment of the day when my husband is doing something else, my contribution is I need to pick up whatever it needs to get done. So I'm going to wash the dishes. But not because I'm a woman and I'm obligated to do it, but because I'm a team player. And so when I change that mentality, I don't struggle with, does this really mean that, my gender, because God made me as a woman, that I wouldn't, this is my fate, this is my calling to wash dishes, while my husband has a different calling because of his gender. And so I feel like when we attach gender to something as simple as washing dishes, it turns into something that it doesn't have to be. Because then you bring onto this simple task as you turn it into something complicated, like, well, what are our gender roles? Whereas if you just simply see it as a task without anyone obligated because of their gender in the house, right? Then it's easier to see it for what it is, which is that it is something important, it is something necessary, and it's something good to do. And it doesn't turn into a negative thing, like, because I'm the woman, I have to do it, and no one else can help me, because otherwise that would mean I'm not fulfilling what I am supposed to be doing. And then you get into other complicated things like, I have a daughter, I have a son. Should I be training my daughter to be washing the dishes, but not my son? Because I want to raise my children then with these, preparing them for the calling that God has placed on them based on their gender. See how complicated it is. So if I don't like to pretend that there aren't implications to the views that I hold. So if I'm going to hold to a view like God gives us gender roles, then I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and pretend like it's not there. And other people in my life have not as well. Other people in my life that hold these very clear-cut beliefs of gender roles and how that looks in the household, they have been vocal in the past about telling me, maybe not so as, clearly, but in subtle ways and very clear as well, but not like the actual words, right? They have made me feel ashamed that I wasn't the woman that they thought I should be because of the household tasks, because I needed help as a woman when I was ill, when I was pregnant, when I had just had my kids and I had a C-section, because I need help and someone else as a woman didn't get any help. that made that person more of a woman than me. That brings a lot of shame. And people that hold a very strict opinion about gender roles like that, they bring a lot of shame to women. And they expect other women to do exactly what they think they're supposed to do. I think what happens when we do that is that we totally dismiss, because we're arguing that, we can misquote scripture even. I was told when my husband was cooking, I was told, well, Abraham's wife cooked better, because it's in the Bible that he called his wife to do the cooking. So because there's examples of women cooking in the Bible, now all of a sudden this implies husbands are not to cook at all. And you're actually setting a bad example for your son and for your daughter. Because now your daughter is going to grow up thinking that men are supposed to cook and help the wife. And these are things that I think people use scripture to justify their own cultural views. And unfortunately, a lot of women are forced into these type of situations in their marriage. And because they are in a marriage where they are treated as servants, then they have to survive in their situation, and they have to, come up with reasons that the Bible, that they are living the way that they're supposed to live as a woman. So it took me a while to realize that I was conflicted about this, because I am a woman and I care a lot about following Jesus, following what the Bible teaches me, how I'm supposed to apply scripture in daily life. Hence the YouTube channel, right? But it took me a while to realize there's a lot of interpretation happening and application to life, which is interpreting as well, right? And I don't have to accept someone else's Bible study, interpretation, and application. I can have my own Bible study and really have my own opinion about what I believe scripture most entirely supports when it comes to my role as a person, and specifically as a woman. Is there a role that the Bible is telling me I have because of my gender? And my conclusion is that every culture in the world, from the beginning of time till today, has their own worldview about gender and has treated women, sometimes forcefully, sometimes using laws, right, based on their worldview and their interpretation of scripture as well. Just because we have something in the Bible that is commenting on how women were seen and viewed and treated, even the rules that were going on during Old Testament, doesn't mean that that is a script for us to live today in our particular time in history with the options that we have as women today. So when I remove this gender topic from my perspective in my household, things become less complicated. And we really are on a serving each other mentality, and no one thinks of themselves as superior or having the last say about anything. So let me shift to complementarian pushback, because what I just said they will feel like, hey, I'm a complementarian and the same thing happens in my family. And it's not just the complementarian men, but there's complementarian women that say the same things. A lot of the comments that I hear is, it works. It works for us. I don't want to tell anybody else's marriage what to do, because in the past I've said it. Hey, each marriage is a completely different situation. What works for one marriage might not work for another. But when I said that we operate as a team without gender roles, I heard back, hey, we're also a team and we have gender roles. But it's very different. My team is defined differently than a complementarian's team, because let's just look at a regular sport, right? Let's say football, because the Super Bowl just happened. That team, there are rules for that team, right? There are different positions. One team player is not going to be the kicker, right? Everyone has their job, and they cannot do the other team player's job, as far as I know. I don't know a lot of football, but that's what I'm guessing. And that's what complementarianism is. And I don't want to misrepresent complementarianism, okay? But everyone's complementarian application is going to be different, honestly. So I'm just going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about the implications that I see and I want to point out, because I have lived in that perspective. I even did an experiment. I really tried really hard to apply that in my own personal marriage. So if anyone wants to argue with me, please keep that in mind, and please maybe do the same thing. Try that experiment for a week. Try to think of your marriage, operate in your marriage as an egalitarian, at least, so that we can have a more relatable exchange, because it's important to be intellectually honest, right? And not just defend your own views, but actually really consider living out both ways to really discover the truth, right? So complementarians might tell me, well, it's biblical, so we should just follow it because it's biblical. I'm sorry, but that's not enough. I could just tell you, hey, egalitarianism is biblical, so just do it. That's not why anyone should do it, just because someone says it's biblical. Complementarian teams look like our gender is going to dictate what we do, including the decision making in the team. So one is the coach, one is the assistant coach, and the assistant coach can input everything they want, but at the end of the day, the coach has the final call. And the coach, of course, will listen to the assistant coach, but when there's a disagreement, the coach is going to do what he wants to do, because he believes God has given him that position in the team. I'm talking about a team where we are in a sports team. I don't know what sport this would be. We have no designated role as far as things having not to do with biology. I'd love to talk about that next. God has given us gender, but as far as everything else, things that don't necessarily connect to gender, there is nothing designated. God has given some strengths and some weaknesses to each person uniquely, individually. If one of us is better capable of creating a spreadsheet and is better with numbers, whether that's the woman or the man, that person, it's better for the team for that person to lead in that area, in the finances. Now, the decisions don't have to be made because that person is more talented, because we're a team. And in this team, it's not one person that always scores a goal. Let's do soccer, for example. A team is about passing the ball, and different people make a goal. So there is no one person always decides ultimately, right? And one person does not rule over the other person. Both people are submitting to each other. The woman is not having the final say, and the man is not having the final say. You are operating, I would say, truly as one, because you have two people but operating as one. So in the way I better understand it is not here the man, here the woman. It's here's the man, here's the woman, and they have to operate as one. They have to reach mutual agreement. They have to respect the giftings that God has given each of them, and they have to construct their marriage to work the best that it can work for the whole team in that way. If I'm sick, the household is lacking somewhere because someone needs to rest, right? So the other team player comes and does the dishes. But if you have this mentality of, oh no, it's not his role, he's the man, even when she's sick, that's not his job in the team. You know, she has to get up, she has to do the cooking, she has to do the cleaning. He should never do it, right? No. So the team player, you know, when a man is down, the other one comes and helps, does the role, the job, whatever needs to be done, and it has nothing to do with their gender. And I think that a lot of complementarians are more egalitarian than they grant, because a lot of complementarianism has to do with, and I really like that this person commented and said, hey, my role as a husband is one that, sure, I'm the leader, but I'm leading with self-sacrifice. And that marriage, in my opinion, even being a complementarian, which I disagree with, but still, because he adds that self-sacrifice to his complementarianism, and he doesn't restrict the things that he does in his family. He helps, you know, with the chores, and sees it as, I'm helping, you know, it is her role. I don't know if that's what he would say, if he would go that far, but he says, I'm helping, right? Then, you know, that marriage is in a better situation than another marriage that is just like, you know, like just the man is the head of the house and he is to be served, right? And no matter how tough, you know, the woman is going through things in life, she's, because I'm the man, she still has to like serve me, right? And so there's no thinking about serving the woman, no sacrifice. Just I sacrifice by, you know, going to work and bringing the money and providing for this family. So I'm not trying to say that complementarian marriages are not operating as a team. What I am saying is, hey, you're not following the implications that I think you would have to if you do see yourself as the woman has to, she's in charge of this part and you're in charge of this part. And here's where I'm like, who's making the rules ultimately? Well, complementarians are saying that the Bible teaches that, hey, it's a self-sacrificial love, Jesus for the church, right? So even if they have these gender roles, they have to add that self-sacrificial love to their complementarianism. How does this look like, in my opinion, in my household? It looks like I have no expectations for my husband as a man. I have no expectation. He has no expectations of me because I'm a woman. I have to consider him as a person. He has to consider me as a person, and I don't have to settle for giving him the last word. I have to have these conversations, and we have to both pursue truth. So what is the truth in each situation that we find ourselves in? And we leave gender out of it. Now, let's talk about, where does gender actually fit in to an egalitarian mentality of simple things like gender roles having to do with like the household, right? Or just in marriage. Let's broaden it a little more. Well, here's where gender and biology kicks in. God did create me biologically different than my husband. But God said that we're one. As a female, or you're born as a male, you're still a person. You just have biological differences. And this is a topic that is so controversial, and I'm even hesitant about getting flagged on my YouTube channel for saying something like that in the culture and the online world that we live in today, right? So I know that this topic, gender roles, a lot of people might feel a little triggered because they're like, wait a minute, you are slipping into like those liberal views that gender doesn't have anything to do with like marriage and things like that. That's a different conversation, and I'm not even commenting on that. Maybe a little I'm commenting on it in the respect that I am saying that God did make us with biological differences, and that as followers of Jesus, we accept the biological body that God gives us, and we live according to it, right? We don't try to change into another biological thing, even if we feel certain ways, even if we would like other things. That's part of like accepting God, his rulership over us, in that, okay, we accept how God let us come into this world. And all of my commentary about gender roles is not saying not to respect them. But in my marriage, God did dictate who would have a baby in my marriage, who would be the one to impregnate the other person to have a baby. But this isn't exclusive to what it means for my experience, even as a woman, because there are some women that are women and that are no less a woman because they can't have babies or because they choose not to have a baby. And the Bible doesn't shame women for pursuing a single life, right? Because they can serve the Lord with their time more than if they were married. And that's where I feel like, wait a minute, here is where our culture, or the Bible's culture, and you see it even all the women that like suffered because they really want to have a baby, because that's how their culture saw them, right? That it was their responsibility as a woman to provide that child, to continue, right? To continue the family line. So because there was a lot of expectations, a lot of shame. Having babies was so attached to how they were seen as, a good woman, But today, that's not the case, and we have the New Testament to help us to better understand it's okay to be a woman or a man and not have children. So our culture today might still hold those expectations over women or men. But we have to see when we're bringing our worldview to scripture, right? So that's what I feel marriage, activities are in the home, the expectations we place on each other because of gender. We're bringing our own culture, our background, right? The people around us, what they say we're supposed to be doing, how they think a marriage is supposed to be even. Biology. So God has dictated, hey, I'm the one that can, and I don't want this to be a dirty word. God created me biologically so that I could become impregnated in my marriage, and my body could, like, God could form a child inside of my womb. And when the baby, comes out, when I wasn't able to have like a natural birth, I had 2 C-sections, very difficult ones. And I thank God that I live in the time that I do, because I was able to, survive those labors. And then when the babies were here, God created our bodies in such a beautiful way that my body was able to provide the nourishment for my helpless little newborns. And today, as beautiful as that is, women even have other options. They don't necessarily have to breastfeed. They can do formula, right? So it's just amazing how the experience of being a woman and having children and culture and all of that, how it changes throughout time. I loved that experience as a woman. I had that experience unique. My husband didn't get to experience having children in that same way. I got to experience connecting with my child in my womb, talking to my child, doing everything I could for my child as I was pregnant, and even like with my C-sections, just like the husband said, there was this self-sacrificial love as a mother for my child. And that's beautiful. My husband had his own experience. How frightening must it have been for him as a husband to have to see his wife going through that. And the husbands have their own experience, but they are different experiences, but we both had a child. And then once we got here, the expectation is I'm the woman, so I'm in charge of feeding the children. Now that they're not being breastfed, now I'm in charge of feeding them. I feel that now it's like, wait a minute. A lot of complementarians don't follow that. They want to be so involved in their children's lives because they have that perspective from the Bible, right, about serving your wife, your children, and that we have in common. Complementarians that are not the other kind, right, the ones that I think you would even agree that it's abusive, and egalitarians, we have in common that we find in the Bible we're supposed to serve each other, we're supposed to love each other. And so that's what it looks like. And it has nothing to do with our gender until it does. Obviously, I'm the one that's going to be responsible for breastfeeding my child because that's a biological factor, right? Unless we have formula, then my husband can help, and that's not an issue anymore. But when we add gender to like other things, God gave you the capacity to have babies, so you have to be responsible for your kids like the whole time, and my responsibility is solely to go to work. Like that's where it's wrong, right? I think that there's a lot more that complementarians should grant and agree with egalitarians, because even within my egalitarian views, I'm not thinking that I'm above my husband because I'm a woman, or just because I don't put that leadership title as far as a complementarian might. When it comes to like spiritual things, when it comes to just making all the decisions in my home, I still am like submitting to my husband because we're one. And so like just because I have egalitarian views doesn't mean that I'm gonna say, hey, you do all the household chores and I'm gonna go to work. And like it's not about that. It's about, okay, what situation do we find ourselves in? What decisions do we want to make about our children? Do we want to homeschool our children? Do we want to And then, okay, if I'm homeschooling my kids, then that means I'm probably not going to get a job. But it has nothing to do with I'm a woman, so I'm going to stay home. It has everything to do with we are two persons making a decision about what we want our family, our team to look like. What are the things that are important for us? What are the things that we're able to do? Because if situations changed and I was supposed to be like the breadwinner, then that would not be a shameful thing for my husband or anything like that. So all this to say that I think we should only apply gender to where it actually is a true factor of a responsibility that we have. Anything more than that, I think it's fair to say, well, that is a personal preference, a personal worldview that we believe our Bible supports. And that's a personal choice to live that out. Well, at least in this country, because in other countries, they force their worldview on gender, on women, and I guess on men. There was the third thing that I wanted to talk about, and it's just about how we communicate with each other, about saying, well, this is biblical, so you're wrong, I'm right, I won the argument. Or saying, well, that's just your opinion. It's not what the Bible teaches. Saying things like that, I mean, you can think those things, but when you start to say those things, it's like my own thought process when I hear someone say that to me, it's like, are you even aware of your own interpreting, your own application decisions? So bottom line, what I want to challenge my viewers today with is when we're having conversations, please do not just throw something out just because you think that they're talking about something that you really, really disagree with. There's a book called Finding Truth. That book by Nancy Pearcey, she goes through so many different worldviews and talks about how they borrow or they're stealing from the Christian worldview. And I think we would also say the same thing about things like feminism. And I'm planning on doing an interview on the topic of feminism and egalitarianism later on with, I think her name is Beth Allison Barr. And she's an author. But I think, for example, for today, all I want to say is look for the things that the Bible does support feminism. We can find mutual agreement with people that, for example, do hold to feminist views. We can say, hey, my Christian worldview agrees that women are, equal to men, not like, throughout church history, we have seen examples of people that under Christianity were doing terrible things to women. And they were actually misusing what the Bible teaches. So that's definitely not what my worldview teaches about women. So we can start conversations like that, and we're introducing the biblical worldview to them without just shutting them down like, oh, you're just a feminist, right? Because I think we have an example of Paul doing this in the Bible, in the New Testament, where he reasoned with these people that had many gods, okay? And he used that as an opportunity to introduce the real God to them. So in the same way, I think we as Christians need to grow in the way we have conversations with people about different things, not just this, but specifically this, because this video is about gender. So even in the way we talk about this in-house discussion about gender roles, marriage, we need to just find a lot of common ground and really truly try to understand what someone actually believes without just telling them what they believe, which may not even be the case, And let's not take things as a personal attack. If someone says, hey, I live my life based, how I believe the Bible teaches me, and if that looks a little differently, or I don't like to use certain words that you may find precious, and that they are supported by scripture, let's not take that as a personal attack, but instead let's respect that someone else disagrees with me, and I can still think that they're wrong, but I can also respect that they are doing their best to follow Jesus in their marriage, even if it looks different. So, as always, leave me your thoughts in the comment area. I would really love to hear what you think about this. And it would also help my channel to continue to grow, to get more videos on this channel to more people that are completely unaware that this channel even exists. And if you would also like to support me by becoming a patron or doing a one-time donation, please visit my website, susanmorales.org. I also share my music and other things that I'm doing on YouTube on there, so you can go check that out as well. See you on the next video, guys. Bye. Joy to